Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hi, Barry Oreck. It's good to see
Chris.
you.
You too.
Welcome to the interview with People's Voice Cafe, which I'm fondly calling PVC NYC TV, for lack of a better branding concept.
That works.
It's good to see you. It's hard to believe that we really first met just about 4 years ago in the fall of 2019.
Right.
And it was at the one of the People's Music Network events, and then you came to Rich Bashner's house and we did the salons, and then just as we were getting going, the pandemic hit and everything kind of stopped. Yeah. But you and I had the pleasure of talking and working together for another year and a half, doing other working on your artistic stuff. And when we talked then, you were kind of figuring out where you were going with your music and what you were going to do next and how you were going to proceed. And I just want to start by saying it's really good to see all the work you've been doing. And now you're holding concerts in your house and all kinds of stuff. I mean, that's all really cool. But I want to flash back first and ask you to tell our audience where you're from originally, where you grew up, how you got into music, and the role that it has played in your life.
Okay, cool. I'll try to do that succinctly.
You can take your time.
I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I grew up in the total folk, blues, jazz mecca of the 1960s when I was kind of coming of age, and the folk revival was in full blast. And I studied guitar at the Old Town School of Folk Music, which was just this amazing place, and certainly set me on my path of protest music and traditional folk and its connection with blues. And I also lived right near Lincoln Avenue, where the South Side blues, people like Muddy Waters and Willie Dixon and Howlin' Wolf and just all the greats were playing at some bars in my neighborhood on the North Side. So this was kind of a moment. And that's when I was learning guitar and learning songs. I pursued it rather intently into my mid-20s, and then I think, like a lot of people, just found I didn't have what it takes to do 5 nights a week at the Steak and Ale playing Eagles covers, and trying to keep a band together, and the whole thing just seemed impossible, and so I kind of segued into my other love, which was dance, and I did that professionally and in different companies in New York City for many years, all the time while playing guitar. And it's a little more than 10 years ago, I started collecting some of the songs I had been writing, and I met an amazing person named Bob Harris, who had a recording studio, has a recording studio, and everything aligned. And I started making records, and have gotten more and more focused and serious about this writing and having a band and playing for people over really the past 10 years. And I'm just starting to work on my 5th album, which will be 5 since 2016. So about every other year, I've been able to collect enough new material to make a record, and it's just amazingly satisfying to do that. And I play the occasional Eagles cover at the farmers market in Indian Lake and elsewhere, but mostly I'm playing my own stuff now, which is incredibly satisfying.
Right. So your two primary places of performance are either within New York City area or in the Adirondacks.
That's right. Yeah. So, and that's been fun, and I love playing the farmers markets, and there's some art centers up there that are fun to play. But speaking of the house concert thing, I decided that the kind of desperate search for gigs was really dragging me down. I'm sure a lot of musicians, anyone who's watching this, will know this intimately. It's hard. And how many times can you get your friends to come out? And depending on where it is, it might be a 45-minute set. They got to buy 2 drinks. They get hustled out for the next band to come in. And so that's, I think, one reason that house concerts are getting so popular is it's just a much more relaxed, much more open-ended way for friends to come and hang out and enjoy music. So that's my latest is doing mostly house concerts. Although it's very exciting to be at People's Voice Cafe again.
Yeah, well, People's Voice Cafe has more seats than your house space. They can fit more people, which is good. I mean, one of the great things about being in your place, which I had the honor of doing, is that it's intimate. I mean, there are only so many chairs you can squeeze into the second floor of a brownstone, and the reality is that the sound is wonderful. It's close. It's really cool. And what I also like about what you're doing is you're not just performing yourself. You are bringing in other performers as well to give them the opportunity to showcase their material. And at least the concert I saw, there's some very interesting stuff that was being played. So I agree. The house concert concept is a great concept. And of course, so is the coffee house concert, like People's Voice Cafe, where we're really trying hard to not just provide opportunities for performers, but provide opportunities for performers to perform before diverse audiences who don't necessarily have to pay an arm and a leg, like as you said, to come in and see music, but can still get to a relatively centrally located location. I mean, Washington Square Park is pretty much a place almost anybody can get to in the city within a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah. And there's definitely fans and friends of mine who are much more likely to come to a Manhattan venue, and always I've always just loved playing there and the kind of audiences we get. The last time actually being February 29th, 2020, which was Leap Day, just before we leaped off the edge of the unknown. And I remember that because Judy Gorman was playing the other set, and it was a full house. We were hugging our friends. We were sharing cookies and drinks, and nobody seemed particularly concerned about this news, about this virus that was, seemed to be a concern elsewhere, but it was not bothering us that night. Little did we know.
Right. And I had seen you earlier in the day because we were all at Rich's earlier for a few hours.
That's right.
And you guys had to hustle out to get to People's Voice Cafe. And then literally 2 weeks later, boom, shut down. It's just amazing, absolutely amazing. We lived through an interesting piece of history. So let me ask you another question, though, about Chicago before we move out of the past. Were you around during the Democratic National Convention? It was
definitely a transformative experience for me. I had come back to make the story particularly short, but it's a big moment in my life. I came back. I was 15 years old. I came back from art and music camp. I was completely in bliss. I had spent a month at camp, at Hull House Camp. And I came back, and that night wandered out into Lincoln Park and sat down with Abby Hoffman and Allen Ginsberg and Jerry Rubin, a few other people in a giant circle. And we were talking and chanting and hearing things. And then the Chicago police, the stormtroopers, came over the hill lobbing tear gas at us. And I became radicalized in, a moment, in an experience. In the next 5 days, I was then tear gassed many times, and ended up in front of the Conrad Hilton, and that I didn't get beaten, but I was actually holding a camera for someone, which turned out to be not that smart either. But it was a transformative political moment that I was kind of right in the middle of. Yeah.
Wow. So in addition to switching to dance, you also became an educator.
Right. So arts education was my kind of winding career path in many ways, and feels like it did bring together all of my interests, both artistically and in terms of research, and it was I say in the past, would still like to do it. I'm an independent consultant, so my work kind of comes and goes, but mostly these days I'm a singer-songwriter and try to keep my hand in education somewhat, however I can.
It's always good to talk to all of the educators that have come into music, or that were always in music. It's amazing how many teachers and former teachers there are doing this, and I think there's a real reason for that, because I think music teaches us all just by being, and then of course if you have messages and good things to share, it's teaching us even more. So that's fantastic. So thank you for that service, sir.
All right. Well, yeah.
So to borrow a line from one of your songs, where are we now in terms of the types of music that you're focused on, and some of the things that you've done in the past? I know you're on your 5th album. Do you see a difference between album number 1 and album number 5 in terms of the type of material? Are we going to hear pieces from album number 5 at the concert on October 14th? What's the story?
So yes, so I'm going to play some brand new songs, including probably a couple that are never been heard before in public. So it'll be a kind of a first tryout, including a new song inspired by the book The Power Broker by Robert Caro, about Robert Moses, which I read the book earlier this year, and this song just recently finished it this week, actually. So let's see, the development. Well, in album 1, I did not have a band yet. So I had pickup musicians, including some really illustrious ones, that played on the record. And so I think one thing that they all have in common after that first album was that I now have a solid band of Jesse Miller, Rima Fand, and Adam Armstrong, who bring so much. And that's really one of the great joys for me, is to get to play with these amazing musicians and develop the material with them, and adding and arranging it with a band. So that's the last 3 albums and the coming one. The material, I write all kinds of songs. So sometimes they're very political, and they're try to give a message. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes my songs, I've got a couple of kind of very personal songs about relationships in this new group of songs. I've got some historical things, the Robert Moses one about a dam project in Tennessee that moved all sorts of people out of their homes. So it's really a mix. My music is varied in terms of its style and messages, and I feel like I'm getting better at it. So I guess wondering if I think there is a progression of some kind. I couldn't exactly tell you what it is, but let's just say, hopefully getting better.
Well, one of the things we notice with a lot of folks who perform at People's Voice Cafe, but also, way beyond that, is the storytelling concept in songs. And I've said this before, so our viewers will be bored. I don't consider myself much of a of a storyteller. I tend to be a little bit more of a preacher. And so I struggle and work really hard to try and be more of a storyteller. How do you perceive yourself, either if you had certain role models for your songwriting, or if you just had a genre that you would categorize yourself in, not folk versus rock, but the type
Right.
of songwriter you are?
Yeah. Well, I think that's right. Storyteller, my heroes are people like Steve Goodman and John Prine, who are, I got a chance to actually study with growing up in Chicago. And so they were, huge heroes from early on, as well as, Pete Seeger, Odetta, Josh White, just many other people. Also, Stephen Sondheim is a huge hero. So I guess that puts me deeply in the storytelling with kind of thoughtful irony and, sort of requiring a certain amount of listening, I guess. Thought-provoking lyrics. So I guess, yeah, that's my, my niche, which doesn't fit a specific genre, but it's definitely storytelling.
So from a practical standpoint, when you're working on a song, do you find that you start first with a concept or specific lyrics or a chord progression? What sort of sparks the creation of a song? Or any and all of the above?
It's an interesting question because it does happen in different ways. I tend to struggle with lyrics. I could write a song a day if it were just coming up with interesting chord progressions and cool tunes. I've got, I don't even know, probably thousands of recorded pieces of me playing guitar. And it's hard, and words often take me a long time. So I started when I started making records, collaborating with some other lyricists. So some of my songs are co-written with Larry Stallman, some of them are co-written with Rob Metter. And if I actually have words presented to me and just need to be shaped and worked with, I'm golden, because it is hard for me to find lyrics, find the right fit. When I, set out to write something like this song about Robert Moses, I feel like I've got more of a path of ideas that I'd like to do. But very often I'll just play a riff a million times, and words, the right kind of words, the fitting of the concept to the feel of the music just happens. And that's more the typical organic way. What is this about? I don't know. Is it about global warming? I don't know. Or is it about that roller pounding the asphalt out in front of my house, and that's going to give me something? So I really like to kind of stay open to what is the music telling me the song should be about. That's kind of my standard, and sometimes that can take weeks, months, or years to find that.
Yeah, no, I get it. And particularly when it comes to lyrics, I struggle terribly with lyrics. And I'm welcoming. I tell all my friends now, you guys have any poems lying around?
Exactly.
Right? It's like, if you got something like, send it to me. I said, because, maybe I can use it, maybe I can't, but if I can, then you'll spark something, and we'll build something out of that. And that's a beautiful.
I wish we could collaborate more with our friends. So my connection with Larry Stallman, I played him a song I had just written. He went, "Oh, well, I got these poems. I write these poems, and I just have some of them." And he sent them to me, and like, bam, they were songs. They were right there. And I had known him for 30 years before he shared any of his poems with me, and thought, you are an amazing songwriter. So yeah, I wish, just that throwing lines out and sharing with our friends what people are doing, I think, is a great source for material. But one thing I am finding as I go further into this songwriting thing, and I love the Stephen Sondheim books. He's written about his process, and you create problems for yourself. You've got a rhyming scheme, you've got a tone, you've got a structure. And so by the time you get to the end of the song, you're in a box.
Yeah.
Finishing, you get to, a good 2 verses, 3 verses, and now you got to finish it off.
Yeah.
Somehow using all of the structures and boxes that you've already created, or blow them out of the water and do something else. And so I find myself in that, like the Robert Moses song, I was probably 2 months trying to finish what ends up being the last 4 lines of the song. The rest of it had gotten to that point and I couldn't nail it. But
interesting.
On Saturday I did.
That's fantastic. I can't wait to hear that's really, really cool. A couple more questions. First of all right, 4 albums, 4 CDs / albums worth of material, lots of performances under your belt. You've got a solid band. I've heard them live. I've seen the videos. They're wonderful, as you've said. Is there any particular song that you've put out there that people have come up to you and said, that's the one, that's the one? Or is there one song of all these, or 2 songs that people really seem to respond to more than others? Or is it a certain type of song that you do that people respond to more than others? I mean, how do you feel that vibe from people?
Well, there's one song that definitely gets the most requests, and that is maybe the most personal song I've written, called Wounded, about family and family histories, and people close to me. And that makes people cry very often, and people ask for it. So I would say, that has kind of emerged as that song. And it's like, that will land. Makes No Sense, which is a up-tempo bluegrass, gets everybody singing, and has the message. The sing-along part is take a little, give a lot, share a bit of what you've got. That's another one that people, if I'm out at a farmer's market and I play that, I see people, sometimes will wander over to the CD sales place when I sing that song. So, and that got a lot of radio airplay when it came out in 2022. So I think those 2 are my, hits. If I've got to say it. And I'm not, I know I'll play Makes No Sense at People's Voice, but Wounded is in competition with some of the new stuff. So we'll see. But as I'm saying it, I thought, well, I gotta.
I think that the arc of a performance, as you well know, is an arc that keeps us engaged. So whatever your set is, I'm sure it's going to keep us engaged. And if Wounded is part of that, that's going to work fine.
Yeah.
And if it's not, it'll still work fine.
Yeah.
But that's really cool. And you had a couple of your songs, you mentioned one already, that placed on the folk charts in 2022. And I know you were pretty happy about that. And were you surprised, or were you just happy?
Well, going through these 4 albums, I have learned about this amazing world of folk music, both radio and just the giant community. I've learned the promotional game, what you need to do to get an album on the radio, and it's just so amazing. Like, nobody knows me. I'm just a guy in Brooklyn writing songs, and I could put out a record and, be on the folk charts with my heroes, be ahead of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band and Joan Baez, and it's just crazy. So it's a beautiful thing, and just making those contacts with DJs. I've gotten a lot of great response and made a lot of contacts with people say they really like my stuff. So as much as you can't make a cent at this, and 0.4 cents a play is not going to get you anywhere. But the idea that people like Ron Olesko and John Stein and so many amazing DJs around the country would say, this is really good stuff. I'm going to put it on the radio is super satisfying. And so it's more about making those contacts and getting your music out in the world.
Some of the
And I'll tell you,
audiences.
it's never happened with modern dance.
Oh, that's funny.
There's no chart.
There's
There's
no
no
chart.
nothing.
Not yet. With AI, there might be one soon. Who knows?
Yeah, could be.
So just picking up on that for a second, we're attracting new audiences to People's Voice Cafe, and a number of the artists that have started working with us are a little bit younger, and sort of more in the beginning of their journey than even than you and I. In terms of getting attention from college DJs or folk DJs or whatever, what's a piece of advice that you would give to a young person at this point in time?
Well, I've got a lot of younger friends doing this, and I hate to be, down about the music business, because, if I were 25 or 30 or 35, I think I would be much more aggressive about, how could I make a living at this? But in terms of my own creativity and sort of working over the years, I'd say, you've got to love it and find your own venues, because the competitive world of music is killing. It's just not, it's just tough. So how do you balance, and this is something you and I have talked about, Chris, how do you, balance the promo part, putting yourself out in the world with what does it take to improve your playing, to write new material, to be inspired. So, finding that balance is a personal thing. And so it's just like, don't lose it, and don't mistake your Instagram followers for, the people who are going to, help you have a successful career.
I think that's very sound advice. Particularly since we're not trying to be the next Taylor Swift or Beyonce or things
Right.
like that. It's a different world for those who are competing there. But certainly be true to yourself, or to thine own self be true, is definitely the watchword for folks like us doing the music that we do. So as we wind up, I wanted to ask you to share with our audience the names of your albums, your website, and anything else that you'd like to share with them that we haven't talked about yet.
It's barryoreckmusic.com. There's also barryoreck.com that can get you there, but barryoreckmusic.com is my music website. If you want to read my academic articles, you can go to barryoreck.com. And the albums, first one was self-titled, Barry Oreck. Then the second one was How the Bright Earth Spun, that has a few covers on it as well as some originals. Third one was We Fit Together, came out at the beginning of the pandemic, and quite a political EP, 5 cuts. And then the last one was Leap Year, which came out in May 2022, all available through all the streaming services and Bandcamp for actual CDs, which I'd love to get out in the world. And what else can I say? I'm really excited to be doing People's Voice again. It's and the idea that it can have a new life at Judson Church, which is also a historic dance venue, place I've gotten to perform, and just a wonderful, wonderful art center for New York City. And it's just such a great audience of people interested in music that has meaning and that music that can change the world in some ways. So we're really excited about this, and this will be great for us as we get ready to go in the studio to make our next record.
That sounds great. And I'll just close with this last question. Back to the Where Are We Now theme, in terms of the politics of the world right now, where are we now as far as the type of energy you're putting into your music? What do you hope will come out of this new album, given where we are today?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the material on the new album does have political repercussions and is, my thoughts and feelings about where we are. But it's a hard question to know kind of where that fits in my worldview, because, the part of me that's thinking I should be making some plans to move to Finland or the Netherlands or something, just in case, runs up against my, desire to just, put a blanket over my head and stay in my room. So songwriting feels like the positive energy I can be putting into the world right now. And some of that is really speaking to what we're doing. I would like to write more sing-along songs and more real, what would be called a protest song, and put things out like you do, Chris, just that are just super powerful and get kind of right to the point. I think sometimes I go in a little bit of a more meandering path, and so I'd love to get more material that would fit at a rally, or that would fit as a sing along, like some of the great protest songs of all time. So that's my next goal. I'm not sure I have that on this album yet.
All right. Well, when you get to the next goal, maybe we'll be collaborating on that one.
Absolutely.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for this time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm looking forward to the show. It should be really cool. Of course, I haven't heard you play live in a while either, since the house concert, which was last year, Frio, the one I came to. So I'm looking forward to the live thing with you. And this is going to be really cool. So let's have a great show and a great turnout. And I will see you on the 14th.
Yeah, great. And thanks for what you're doing for People's Voice. This is really...
Hey, it's a team effort. Everybody, we got a lot of people there's a lot of work for this organization, and it's all volunteer. So it means a lot to everybody. So
thank you. Glad to be part of it.
Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week.
Thanks.